I blame shotgun weddings. Because when we were a community, if a man were to get a woman pregnant, he was dragged out. He was told he had to marry her. If he didn't have a job, somebody in the family gave him a job, and they were forced to be a family.
Yeah.
And that tradition of like getting pregnant and still wanting that man to take accountability happened. But as community fell apart, nobody was holding these men accountable and forcing, we're going to use the word, right? We're forcing that man to uphold family, right?
I
And
agree.
so
When people were talking about cohabitating and the outcomes, we also look at the impact that it has on the children. And I remember reading something before, I think it's something that we did on She Critique, and we were looking at stats and stuff. And it was just saying like there's a hierarchy of the outcome on children. So the hierarchy is marriage has the best outcomes for children. Then the cohabitating has, the next best, and then of course if you single, it has the, most impact on children. And so it was saying things like when you are cohabitating, the likelihood of it ending up in marriage is less,
Mm,
right?
that's true.
And then the likelihood too of like when it was looking at marriage itself, it was saying that typically married couples earn higher incomes. They're typically more educated, have those resources. So all of those things are going to be beneficial to the children within the confinements of a marriage versus just cohabitating. So the end goal should always end up being a marriage, especially when children are involved.
I wanted to, I love that mistaken. And B Taylor, to kind of answer your question in a slightly different way, I blame shotgun weddings. Because when we were a community, if a man were to get a woman pregnant, he was dragged out. He was told he had to marry her. If he didn't have a job, somebody in the family gave him a job, and they were forced to be a family.
Yeah.
And that tradition of like getting pregnant and still wanting that man to take accountability happened. But as community fell apart, nobody was holding these men accountable and forcing, we're going to use the word, right? We're forcing that man to uphold family, right?
I
And
agree.
so we're seeing this learned behavior continue as society has shifted away from community into individualism.
Hmm.
But the things that some people were taught is still moving forward.
Yeah, because I think the women are being not forced to, but they're being pushed to take birth control, abortions. Men are like, oh well, get an abortion, get on birth control. They're downing all these things on women to take accountability. But I do think shotgun wedding probably, I mean, did it ever work? I feel like it did work because the man was forced to take responsibility. What do you think, Nelson? Would, because a lot of men, a lot of black men want to shame single mothers. They feel like if they bring shaming back, then that will prevent single motherhood. But I think if we bring back shotgun weddings where you are forced to marry that woman that you have a child with, that would make men also be more disciplined as well, where they're not shooting up the club with different women. What do you think about that?
I think I think shotgun weddings are were good for a time. And it might still have a purpose now, honestly, just because there needs to be something for men, for black men to establish discipline and understand what accountability looks like.
Mm.
So I do think that there needs to be something in place that you do need to, this is what it's going to look like for you to take care of your kids. Maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be you have to marry this woman now, but there needs to be something in place where you have to be responsible for your kids. And I'm not even just talking about
Child support?
financial. No, that's
Okay.
because honestly that's a bad thing.
Mm.
A lot of times when women have kids, for some reason the power dynamic shifts to where now the woman is telling the man, do this for the child, the baby needs this, the baby needs that, you need to do this, we need to go this to take the kid to the park as a family, like rather than the man is leading with how you want the family to move. How do you want things to go? Now it's just you give the money and I decide what it is, what it is that we're going to do. We're going to decide what it's going to look like for you to be a father. And I think a lot of the power has been taken away from men to even be able to step up in the first place to be able to care for the kid. And I also think that for where men need to be held accountable, women need to be held accountable too, because they need to understand what it looks like to vet a man. If this man is ready for marriage, if he's ready for a serious relationship, rather than being easily sweet talked. Like, we need to teach them what game looks like, and to stay away from people that run game, because game is nothing but manipulation. So that's intentional stuff that I think we have to do as a community with our children and our children's children.
Man, go ahead, Chen Monet.
Well, I once I think about things, I think that I think men do have power. Their power is marriage. That's their power. I think it's a checks and balance. Men have the power over marriage. And so if you want full control over a household, you have to be the man of the household. And that's how you get your power. Get married. I think that everything is so crazy how everything is put in place to check the other one, and everybody gets mad at the power that the other one has. Instead of just accepting their power and using their power for their advantage. You understand? So that to me is a big, she has the power over the kid. You have the power over the household if you want to accept that power, and it was something else about the shotgun wedding. What I saw in the census report, and I'll try to find it in between time, was I do believe shotgun weddings still occur. They're not considered shotgun weddings, but I've noticed that a lot of women who are of other races, their kid is conceived out of wedlock, but because and there's actually a census report in the report that state that, however, they marry before the second child is born or before birth. So I don't know if they're collecting this information maybe at the doctor's appointment. Are you married? Blah, 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 blah. But then when the birth actually occurs, the marriage has taken place. But there are I don't know how they're calling it, but there are groups of women, and I'll try to find that are getting married in between time. So it does not look like the child is being born out of wedlock.
Yeah, people actually
We're just not doing it.
Yeah, people actually cared about their seed being a bastard. Now it's like, that was the thing. You would call them illegitimate kids or bastard. Is that the correct term? Kids that's born from a person that's non-married. That was like a shameful thing for men and women. It's like you didn't want to have your son, your firstborn son, to be born and being called a bastard, right? That was like a shameful thing. So men also honored that and married. I know plenty of women they got married, and I was like, oh wow, that was quick. And the next thing you know, a baby came out like a few months later. I was like, oh. I was like, a friend of mine literally just did that. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know. They kept it under wraps until she was at the end of her pregnancy. They was well off married and everything. The family was involved. I just feel like what's going on, Nelson? What's going on with our community? Why are we so messed up?
Nelson's like, I ain't got the answer for that. Y'all all screwed.
I'd be rich if I had the answer for that. I mean, but I still believe that we have a lot of hope for our community with our young people, not the adults. The adults, we're done. There's no hope at all for us. But starting to teach our kids like the foundational elements that they need to have to be successful, getting them away from like core. I'm big on core values. So, and for some reason in our community, our core values are money, power, and respect. Everything that we do is revolving around that, and it's the most toxic and destructive thing that has happened to our community. Mm-hmm. We need to throw that out the window, bring back integrity, humility, wisdom, and knowledge,
character,
love, all of the character traits, because we're raising our kids to have personality disorders. I mean, honestly, when you look at it, look how we treat our young boys when they're growing up. You're holding them as a baby and you're saying mama's little man, mama's little man. Oh, he's going to get all the girls. He's going to be heartbreaking everybody. Like, we say the most random things and do the most random things, like setting them apart and complaining when they're not starting on their football or basketball team. We're always saying our child has to be the best, has to be the smartest. Our children realize that. And so now they grow up thinking, this is how I got to be. I'm better than everybody else. If I'm not better than everybody else, then there's something wrong with me. We're raising our kids to have bad character. And it's showing in when they grow up and they have children, just a revolving loop of dysfunction.